Yeah,
Ah,
not yet. Oh, not yet. Oh, there we
hi.
go.
You got the circle of what?
I'm sorry. It's that circle. The circle. It's
The
of waiting.
so the yeah,
Yeah,
the thinking
yeah.
circle.
I'm thinking, and I'm thinking. I'm thinking. I might let you on go live. I might. I might. Oh, there we go. I let you. Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Rick?
I I am I am great.
I love how we did not coordinate any of this, but we're both wearing blue. And
Yes.
I even have a blue pillow here.
Yes. 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 It's
And some matching colors on my other pillow.
and just so everybody understands our relationship, this is the only time we ever talk.
It's true.
Pretty well, right?
Yeah.
And you're
I
in
mean,
you're in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm on the west coast of Canada. So we're miles and miles apart, but through the miracle of technology,
we've become very close friends.
we have we have. And man, have you picked a subject today?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, you have. Yes. Um, but before we get into it, so how was your week? How has been the week?
It's been pretty good. Just, single mom, juggling. I've become really good at juggling.
Okay,
Had a pretty good week. I had a revelation. I don't think it was this week, it was the week before. I don't know if I shared this with you.
what's that?
Um, I actually met with, I went on a hike with a coach that I've been working with. And it was interesting how she pointed out how much of a New Yorker I am.
How much of a New Yorker you are?
And I was like, kind of like, I had to think about it for a second because that's not how I identify myself, right? I feel deep in my core that I'm Italian, but
Oh,
yet I've been here 22 years, right? And so it has rubbed off a little bit. So I thought it was it actually got me thinking, not so much, obviously, it makes sense why
yeah,
she made that comment and why that will be, but it got me thinking about how is it that I never even thought about it in those terms, right? Because I'm just used to seeing myself in a certain way, right?
yeah, yeah. It's kind of interesting because I just before we came on, I shared with you I was gonna I'm gonna announce later on today. I'm gonna do a workshop in a couple of weeks on understanding personality types. So it's kind of interesting how you say, "Oh, you're so New Yorker." Like, it's like, okay, define that. Like, what does that mean, right?
Quick would be one word.
Hey, good
In
afternoon,
a
Angela.
rush.
In a rush, always. Yes, yes, yes. Um, but yeah, I mean, they're only traits, right? But it's interesting how people, again, getting back to our episode about labels, which I encourage anybody, if you haven't watched, I think it's just a great episode that we did. Um, and you can get stuck on those, right?
You can get stuck on those and you take those labels and interpret them in the ways that resonate with you through the filters that you have built over your life, right? And you as the meaning machine that you are, you're going to give it the meaning that makes sense to you. So
Yeah, yeah.
labels are like highly interpretable. Is that even a word?
Well, it is now, and if it isn't, we'll add it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
So
absolutely, absolutely. Um, so yeah, welcome, Angela. Good to see you again. Um, and anybody else that is watching or listening and watching the recording later on, please make a comment and ask questions and anything during the episode. We welcome that. Uh, it gives us some talking points. Although I got a feeling we'll be this one, like when you came up with it, I thought I've heard this before, And sure enough, I shared a podcast, and you shared a podcast with me about it. And I never, I never really heard of the term before. Like it was something that was new to me, and then especially, I mean, I'm very familiar with positivity. I mean, um, positive, positive behavioral therapy, kind of a thing, positive thinking. I mean, there's a lot of that kind of thing. When I was growing up, particularly in the 70s and 80s, that was a big thing. And I know from my own personal life, positivity, like my mother it was always talking about silver linings and lessons learned and all this other kind of stuff. And sometimes I felt it rubbed me in the wrong way, and sometimes okay, I can
Mm.
get it, kind of a thing. Um, so I had to actually I did a little bit of research. I had to go and look up some definitions around the word, the phrase toxic positivity, which if you don't mind, I can share a couple of them that came up.
Yeah, please.
Um, the first one was toxic positivity is the assumption, either by oneself or others, that despite a person's emotional pain or difficult situation, they should only have a positive mindset. And that was from Dr. Jamie Sukerman, who's also a psychologist and therapist. And then this one, which is along the same lines, toxic positivity is an obsession with positive thinking. It is the belief that people should put a positive spin on all experiences, even those that are profoundly tragic.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, so tell me more about your passion behind this and your understanding.
Well, I think the first I heard this term actually quite a while ago, and the first time that I heard someone talk about it, I was like, oh, finally, someone's putting, like words to something that I just couldn't really point my finger to, and why I was so triggered sometimes by um, perhaps someone's really good intentions, but
Yes.
the
Yeah.
outcome was like I felt unseen, I felt triggered, I
Mm.
felt like avoiding that person and never talking to them about the thing that was upsetting me. And when I experienced this in my life the most was after my husband died. And
Okay.
I know that people have the best of intentions when that happens, and it's very tricky when someone dies. It's hard to know what to say, and it's honestly it's really hard to know what to say because there's not much that you can say to fix it, right? And the
Yep.
problem often is that people try to fix it, right, in quotes, or tell you something that's going to make you feel better. But ultimately, there's really not much that can make you feel better. Grief is such a complicated feeling, and it takes time to process, right? But I often heard things that I got very angry about, like,
Okay.
oh, it's all part of a plan, or like everything happens for a reason. And
Mm.
this is like my husband has freshly died and he was 33 years old. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, you give me a good reason, right? Like,
Yeah.
just please don't say that again because I'm just not really feeling it, or like I got multiple letters were like, the word sometimes were like spiritual, sometimes were like religious statements. And I really remember like putting those away in an envelope and never looking at them again. And
Mm.
and I do know in retrospect that those people meant well. They just wanted to be there for me. They just wanted to say something to make me feel better. But really the fact that I did not feel seen or heard with those feelings created more discomfort in me than really helping me feel any better.
Yeah.
And throughout my life, I think I have encountered people that simply cannot recognize that a situation is difficult, right? And they take positivity to this whole new level. Everything has to be positive, and any negative thinking or words or thoughts or statements are like a no, or like, what are you doing? Don't say that, right? And so I think that's where this becomes toxic, because it fails to recognize the challenge, it fails to recognize how the person is feeling, it fails to recognize that while situations may be difficult or tragic, yes, we can still find a learning in it, but we cannot deny the fact that these things that have happened or the situations are painful and difficult and challenging and need time to heal, right? It
Mhm.
almost denies the nature of the tragedy sometimes, or the nature of the challenge for the person. Uh,
It totally does, and because what I was hearing from you, there was a couple of really key words about what you were saying about underplaying the situation, like not truly. And I found that really, I mean, even my in my own personal life, um, mostly because of my conditioning thinking, right? Like we should all get along, and when I see somebody upset, I have this healer in me. Like I want to help. It's like
mhm,
um it's an uneasy feeling for me to see somebody in pain or suffering. Um Now, do I have the right skills or knowledge or understanding about what that person needs? That's what was missing for me. um and a lot of times, like you said, yeah, like with good intentions, it was never landing the right way. And we found that a lot in the field of being a first responder, responding to quite traumatic events and things like that. Well, we had a really good skill set for helping people, uh, uh, splinting and spinal mobilization and stopping bleeding and doing other treatments. When it came to the psychological side of things, our toolbox was really empty.
mhm.
And a lot of people were finding it really uncomfortable confronting people that were literally suffering in front of them, and knew that there was really nothing that they could do as much as they wanted to do something. And a lot of times it kind of comes out like, it's like little pet phrases that we hear all the time, right? Everything's got a
Mhm.
reason. It's like um and we don't want to get into some of the religious side of things, but some of it can be really hurtful in the moment.
Really hurtful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really hurtful. So not only doesn't help the person feel, but it actually made me feel worse, like
Yeah.
absolutely worse.
Yeah.
Like, because I felt so lonely with my
Hmm.
feelings, with my pain, and I felt like it didn't matter how I felt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, obviously I'm giving a very extreme example. That's not something that people go through every day, but I think it's a good way to kind of showcase what this can do, right? And I think it comes from good intention. It comes from not knowing what else to do, but and we can get into this in a minute. It can also come from some certain personality traits of avoidance, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Of denial, right? Uh, they can go hand in hand with that, right? Because that is exactly what happens when you fail to acknowledge the person and their feelings. You're denying them, and and often that denial can also come from the person who's not able to deal with the situation, right? Doesn't know what to say or what to do or how to help you, so they go into denial, so they completely dismiss what's going on
100%. But it's in an innocent way, in the
in an
sense that,
innocent way,
yeah.
and sometimes we develop these coping mechanisms that are not only toxic for ourselves, they're also toxic in relationship to others. And if you are someone who, you know, avoids at all costs, there's a point where that's not just affecting you in your life, it affects those around you too, because then you apply that same way of relating to the world in relationship to others.
and that, and you bring up a couple of interesting points there too, because when you said, because this also could be self-directed. Like, it doesn't have to be, something coming from somebody else. you
Hmm.
could you could be in a situation where you are telling yourself that you should be thinking or feeling something different.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that could be really tough, because I know, I mean, it's cultural. My dad's not an emotional guy, although gets emotional. And when he has emotions that come up, he gets very dismissive about them. He says, "Oh, I should not be like this. I should not be," that kind of stuff. Not realizing that it's just a natural process. It's just a natural thing that we humans do. Like, we feel. That's our nature.
Hmm.
We feel, right? And we somehow have got it into our heads, particularly in Western culture, that certain feelings are not appropriate, or not good.
Or weak, or
Or, yeah, all
yeah,
sorts of different things. All sorts
yeah.
of, and and it's one thing to hear it from somebody else, particularly one of that you admire, or have some authority, like, um, a relationship with. But when you have it within yourself, and you're battling, right? Oh, I shouldn't be feeling this way.
Hmm.
Who are you going to argue with? Kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, if that's how you show up with someone who's going through a tough time, right? You just revert to positivity, stay positive, everything's gonna be okay. Like, you dismiss the feelings and the challenges and how the person is, you know,
Actually feeling. Yeah.
the feeling and the losses that are in there for the person. Then when the time comes to deal with that same situation for yourself, of course, that's what you're going to do to yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the way we show up for others is exactly the way we show up for ourselves. And, and often, actually, we're like meanest to ourselves than we are to others, right? So,
Yes, we are the toughest of the critics, aren't we?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And part of it is, like, there's this belief system around, I should be better. I should do better, right? Kind of again, it's just a made up kind of belief around it, but it becomes really, really real, and you start operating around that piece, right? Um, but the but it's for me, it's important for people to understand that in the moment, those feelings are real. Like,
Hmm.
and to have somebody, or even yourself, dismiss them as inappropriate, or you know um, all the other different scenarios that might come into mind, is really undervaluing the importance of having feelings, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah, you know and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you.
And it doesn't. And the other thing that I want to point to is that even if you're using it to see the silver lining, right, and to see what's a learning, there's a time and a place for that. It doesn't mean that what you are stating as your positive statement in that moment is not true. It's
Yeah.
just not. It has to be done in a certain way, and it's not always appropriate. It's
Well,
the way you do it, right? It's not the concept behind positivity that's wrong. It's the way that it's being used to either dodge or avoid, or dismiss, or like skip over someone's pain or challenges, because in a sense of what better, that that's not an
mhm.
empowering way of thinking, or like then it becomes you're using it in the wrong way. There is always a learning, even, believe it or not, and I can't believe I'm sitting here saying this now, even in losing someone so close to me at such a young age, there was a lot that I learned from that. There was a lot that came from that has made me who I am today.
Oh,
It has taken many years to see it this way, though, right? the funeral is not the place to go and tell someone that, or like, it's just, please, can we just not do the,
Yeah.
everything's gonna be all right statement when,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just lost
Stay
my
strong.
husband.
Stay strong.
Stay strong, like, it was meant to be. I even got, it was meant to be. I remember I even got a couple telling me, we have good news. And I'm like, what can possibly be good news right now?
No. Oh
We're
no.
pregnant. And I'm like, oh, you're pregnant. Oh, yeah, I will never have children with my husband. But thanks a
Yeah.
lot for sharing.
Oh boy.
This is the way my brain was
Working.
thinking in that moment. And it's
Yeah.
like, trying to cheer someone up is not necessarily the way to, it really is kind of coaching 101, right? You can't push something on someone. They have to want to feel that way. They have to see it on their own. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, with something like grief is, again, the extreme example of this.
Yes. Yes.
It takes time to make that mental shift. It takes time to be able to see things from a different perspective. But let's even say that it's not a loss and it's just something that you're having a challenging time with. It, you could hear this, the learning, you could hear the positive spin on it. But if you are still rehearsing it, if you're still feeling wronged, if you're still feeling hurt, you're still in the phase of being at the mercy of your own emotions, that's really not helping you. That's not really doing anything for you. I
No.
think, on the contrary, it's going to make you not want to think that way at all, because now you're angry about it. You're triggered in a different way.
And and you're not getting clarity from that,
You're
right?
not getting clarity.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, so what I see as, and it's not a solution, but it's more of like a way of understanding, is that feelings need space. They need like you said, time and whatever, but we need to feel it. And there's a quote that I love from one of the authors that I shared one of his books, Sydney Banks, where he says, if we were not afraid of our own experiences, that alone could change the world. And
Mm.
it, and really it means, if we were not so afraid of our feelings, right? So in other words, embracing our feelings for what they are and allowing them to flow without blocking them or trying to change them, or add more fuel to it by saying, well, this is not right, kind of a thing. I need to have a positive thought come in, any of that kind of stuff. We are diminishing our humanness.
We're diminishing our humanness. We're not acknowledging what is, that those
Yeah.
feelings are
Yeah.
there. We're not releasing them.
Yeah.
And now we're creating guilt. We're
Yeah.
creating, a sense of not enoughness. I'm not doing the right thing. I'm feeling rejected. My feelings are being rejected. It always goes back to those two or three, right? So it feeds
Absolutely.
into our fears. It feeds
Yeah.
into the very things that we're avoiding to feel. And so I always say, if you are feeling angry or upset or sad, you got to let those emotions out, and sometimes it's complicated, right? Depending on what it is, that the emotions may come back again and again and again, and the release needs to happen multiple times. It's not just a one-time release, especially, and I
Well,
want to underline this with grief, right?
especially if you're not, um like for me, from a coaching perspective, and even I mean, it's hard with, raising kids too, right? I mean, they go through so many different things, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, okay. And but it's so interesting, like again, as a father, when you're my girls, were upset, from my perspective, right? From my perspective, what they were going through seemed, and I don't want to be dismissive here, but it's only from my perspective, it seemed trivial, right? However, with my better understanding of what's going on, I can see how, at that point in time, and I'll come on national network here and apologize for some sometimes of sugarcoating things, right?
Mm.
Kind of saying,
Yeah.
like, that's you'll get over it, but at that moment it was very real for them, and it's very real for everybody. Um, and and when you don't understand it, you're afraid of it, and
And I
that's
love that you're bringing this up because I think you touched upon something super, super, super important, right? I think this is the prime example of doing something that is not toxic or not healthy for your
Mhm,
children without realizing it, without
mhm,
realizing that
mhm.
what we're doing is harming them in some sense emotionally. It's making them feel not seen. It's making them feel, and I'm guilty of that too. I really had to consciously realize that I was doing that because it was a program that I was running, right? That's how I was raised,
Yeah,
like it doesn't matter. Stop acting like a child, right?
yeah,
Sometimes we say these things to our children. They're like, did I just tell her to stop acting like a child? I
yeah,
did,
yeah,
right? And it's and it doesn't come from a place of wanting to hurt them. It just comes from a place of not knowing any better, not knowing how to
totally.
relate because we're
It's totally.
so far from where they are,
I
right?
mean, let's face it. If we knew better, we'd be doing better. It's as simple as that, right? At that time, and that's why I don't, as much as I can reflect and sort of have feelings of regret and remorse. Um, it At that time, I was doing the best I thought I was doing, you know, because if I knew better, I would have done better, and and that's kind of the secret for me. Um, but yeah, it is touchy with kids because they don't come with owner's manuals. It's like
They
they
forgot those instructions for every
they're,
single
they're
kid.
all over the gamut when it comes to emotions, especially when they're younger. And and I didn't knew that, like what do you do? Like, what do you do, right? And it's like you talk to your parents and they say, well, don't give them an inch, kind of a thing. If they take an inch, right?
They want the whole
Oh,
arm.
that's right. And then of course you get the really good philosophy about um, uh, if you got nothing to cry about, if you want something to cry about, I'll give you something to cry
Oh my God, I know.
about.
Yeah.
Oh, what possibly could go wrong with all that, right?
And you know what? And those lessons come to haunt you as your children get older, and they remind you of these things. My son
Oh,
actually
totally.
did something similar to me yesterday. I was like,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
I'm not gonna say what it was, but it was kind of he was referring to the way I asked him to do something, and I was being very nice. And he's like, Mom, that's not how you usually say it.
Oh, busted.
Busted. But I was like, yeah, ah, you're right. I wonder why I escalate to that point. And then he laughed and, he knew exactly why because it was about him picking up his sweatshirt.
Oh dear.
And I'm like, yeah, maybe because after the 50th time I say it, I'm not saying it so nicely. And that's the one time that you seem to hear it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there was a funny little TikTok video. I'm not on TikTok, but every once in a while, when you're on Facebook, these little things pop up. And there was two mothers, um, and one mother had three kids, and the other mother had a single child. And the other one
Mm,
was you could hear them being really loud and in the background, kind of a thing. And the one with the single parent child was going, okay, now be nice, like just lower your voice, be
mhm.
like, and the one with the three children was going, stop it. kind of,
Of course, or shut up.
yeah, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
funny. It was kind of funny, like um, how things change as you get more kids, right?
How things change as you get more kids and your attention is spread a little bit thinner, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because I definitely have this dynamic with some parents that have single children, especially if their children are like the younger,
yeah,
like
yeah.
younger than mine or like my daughter's age. I'm just like, yeah, I heard you. And
Hmm.
in the grand scheme of my life, that is not a very big deal.
But so one of the things, and it's funny how kids can have certain wisdom in their responses that I didn't hear at the time, and yet
Hmm.
from the coaching perspective and what I've learned in coaching, it it becomes more prevalent. And one of the things that you hear, or I've heard, is you just don't understand,
Hmm.
and you're not listening to me.
Hmm.
And I think those are two key things that, as individuals who are confronted with something that's uncomfortable, that we see that's uncomfortable, and we want to help, the two key things that would, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that I see that would be the most helpful is seeking to understand
Hmm.
and listening. Probably
Hmm.
listening first, and then seeking to understand afterwards. But definitely listening.
I love that you brought that up, and I want to add to it that the first step is always awareness, understanding
Yeah,
that you're doing the thing that we're
yeah,
talking about, right?
yeah.
And so I would say that your clues are those things that you just mentioned, especially children. I think that's exactly the way my daughter has said that, or my son has said that a few
Oh yeah.
times, right? You don't
I don't know
understand.
anyone that has not.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. So
And
those are your clues, right? When you hear those clues, now be aware of it. And instead of dismissing them like the emotion or the feeling that you're trying to dismiss in that moment already, instead of
yeah,
dismissing the clue,
yeah,
take it as a clue and really check in with yourself. Like, am I really listening to
yes,
what this child is telling me? It is ridiculous. I mean, let me tell you, there are moments where it is absolutely ridiculous. My daughter is literally like going around looking for a reason to cry. And it's like, you're just looking, you just need to cry. And actually, she did that yesterday. And for as long as I got triggered by the fact that every single thing, the rug is gray, she's like anything, oh my God, it's dark outside, right? She's having a meltdown after a meltdown. And for as long as I got triggered by it, I got like, just stop it. Enough is enough, right? She kept going. And then at some point, I just looked at her and I was like, honey, come here. You just really need to cry right now, don't you? You're feeling very sad, aren't you? And she
mm,
was like, yes. And she came and hugged me and she cried she gave it a good cry. It's almost like she felt like she got permission to just
yeah,
cry.
yeah,
And then she was fine. And then she's just like pretend playing and hiding and like nothing has ever happened. But for as long as I was fighting it and I was denying it, because I think sometimes even as parents, we shut down. I know I shut down. Like after the fifth meltdown, I'm not hearing it anymore. I'm blocking it
oh yeah,
completely.
yeah, yeah.
But we become dismissive, right? In those moments where we're like going into protective mode to protect our own sanity, frankly,
Hmm. Hmm.
sometimes we are dismissing them even more, and that does not produce the results that we're looking for.
No,
It does not end that emotional rabbit hole that they're in. It
yeah,
just doesn't. But acknowledging it and allowing it to just like go, just let it just blow up, just cry, just do it. That completely relieves it. And this is right. We're talking about children. The same is true for adults. Allow
Absolutely.
yourself to feel
Absolutely.
it.
And there was a documentary that our Canadian Broadcasting, um, one of the channels, had put on, and they actually went around this area here, on the island, and went to several teens that were drug addicts on the street, not in the house anymore. And there was interconnecting stories. What was interesting for me to hear in the interviews, what the kids were saying was, when they were asked, sort of like, what are you getting from taking drugs? It was to get rid of the feelings that they were having.
Mm.
They So in other words, they did not know any other way of processing the feelings that they were having. And so they turned to the best thing that they could think of to basically quiet the feelings, to zone out, whatever you want to call it. And it just happened to be drugs and alcohol, right?
Hmm.
And I see that as I've been more and more exploring, um, mental health and well-being, is how much we, including myself, um, have not had good coping mechanisms, or good things about what we do with feelings. Because I was culturally conditioned that certain feelings I should not have, and
Hmm.
when you have them, you either got to suppress them. You can't show them. Suck it up. Especially in the field I was in. In the beginning, we had no idea what post-traumatic stress was.
Hmm.
It was just do the call. Just do the call. Um, the best way you can. Kind of thing. Now it's getting better. Like I'm not going to say it's all doom and gloom, but when we learn, and especially if we can get this to the kids, to learn that they can process their feelings in a more, uh, better way, a healthier way, right? They don't have to turn towards things that are saying, well, I'm having angry thoughts, or I'm feeling very sad, I need to do something about it. If they understand what feelings really are, it's just you processing something, and just let yourself process it. And I'm here for you.
Expressing them, express,
Yeah,
there's nothing you can do other than let them be and express
exactly.
them, right?
Exactly.
But do it like drug abuse, or like eating disorders, or like
That's yeah.
like any of those types of addictive behaviors are created to protect us, right?
Yeah.
It's always about us protecting ourselves in the in the way that we figure out in the moment with the tools and the knowledge that we have. Because to your point, we were never given the tools or the permission or a way to deal with this big thing called feelings, right? It's something that we feel every day, and yet so many people don't know what to do with their feelings, right? And they get either repressed or dismissed or suppressed, right? And feelings then come out either in, there you just use coping mechanisms like addiction to get rid of them, or they come out in toxic behaviors, right? They you just unleash that repressed feeling or anger onto somebody else, right?
or
They
you
find their way out.
or
It's
they find
just,
their way out, or you do what I
yeah.
do, and you go to the self-help section of your local library and bookstore, and you buy a gazillion different books, and you take a bunch of workshops, and kind of a thing, thinking that there's something wrong, that I should not be feeling this way
Mm,
or thinking this way.
that's
And
interesting.
yeah, and not understanding that it's just part of life. It's and
It-
when you embrace it as that, it changes. It changes.
And I love that you shared this, because I see a slightly different perspective in this too, right?
Okay. Yeah.
You thinking that there was something wrong with you set you on a path that you were meant to be on, right? Learning things that you're now here talking about with me, and right,
Well,
discussing. And so,
yeah. I mean, but it almost, well, again, I don't know what you put language in. into it or words into it, but you're absolutely correct in the sense of, I believe that we're all on a path,
Hmm.
right? And I'm here because of that.
Absolutely. That's what
Like
I'm saying.
who
Yeah.
knows? Who knows what would have, like, we don't know. The only thing that I do know is that I'm in this present moment with you having a wonderful conversation about toxic positivity, which is kind of like oxymorons, right? Um, and if anybody doesn't know what an oxymoron is, like postal service, right? Spare change. Two things just don't go seem to go together. And
Hmm.
how can positivity be toxic? And
And
but
yet it is.
and it is, but you're right, but at that moment I didn't see that. It's only in reflection that I can understand that, right? So
Absolutely. It's just it's the ultimate demonstration of how surrender would work, right?
yes,
Letting
yes,
go of making sense of it, then what set you in a path to just find out what was wrong with you, it's actually the path that set you up to be someone who's helping others figure themselves out,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so, you know, I would like to actually speak to what do you do when you're on the receiving end of it, right? Because we're
yeah,
talking so much
please.
about when you're the one who is being having the toxically positive attitude when someone's going through a hard time. What do you do when you're on the receiving end of it, like other than get triggered, which is inevitable, right? I think again, it's about bringing yourself back to this is the best that this person knows how, and this is not the right person for me to talk to. This is not the person that I need to be looking for recognition or acknowledgement or any kind of advice that's going to feel healthy or helpful to me, which can sometimes be very lonely, right? When we need that support and when we need to be to feel seen, and so another thing that I would say that you can do is express that, right?
Hmm.
Express that to the person. Hey, I know that you're trying to cheer me up. It's really not making me feel better. It's actually making me feel worse, and I thought maybe you should know that. No hard feelings. I know that you mean well, right?
Yeah,
Always acknowledge and see the person first, like coaching tip here. Acknowledge the person and see them and recognize their intention, and then sandwich in your criticism, let's
your
not call it criticism, your feedback.
feedback.
Yeah, your
And
feedback.
I think I heard Jennifer Aniston in one of her shows give some really unique feedback when, and it was a scene quite similar to what you're like. It was in a funeral situation, and somebody was doing exactly what you were talking. And of course, in movies, they really exaggerated that. The positivity, kind of a thing. Um, and but yeah, I mean, I think I think the bottom line is to understand for yourself that it's okay to have that going on. It's okay to have feelings. And it's unfortunate that you may not have, the right person or the right partner, the right whatever conditions to be heard. But I think in the end you have to somehow maybe look for those opportunities.
I mean, I think, just really look for people that are aligned with you, that are
Well, even
able
what
to
about this one? I just thought about this. Sorry to interrupt you. I was just thinking, like, why not just telling that person, look, I know you want to help,
that's
but
what
this
I just said.
did you?
The feedback.
No, but feedback in a way of, this is what I need from you. Just listen.
Yeah, but sure, you can say, hey, like, I just need you to listen to me. Yeah, I love that. I think that's not a very big ask, right? And at the same time, you have to be careful because you can't simply ask someone to understand where you're coming from, which I
Yeah,
remember oftentimes saying that to people, like, you just don't understand where I'm coming from. Can you just try to understand where I'm coming from? No, they can't.
No,
At the
and
same time, anyone can just listen, right? Can you just be a warm body and listen to me?
yeah, yeah,
Right? So that's one way to just give that kind of feedback and that kind of ask. And at the same time, I would just, not everyone's going to be like that. There are going to be people that will be on the receiving end of it, that will just listen and it will hold the space for you to express how you feel and let it out. And then I would also say at some point, you should also take the feedback that now you're in a loop, because then that's the other side of the coin, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
very beneficial to express your feelings and let them out and be in them. And then there's a point where it's time to get out. There's a point where
yeah.
you're
There's
just
a
sitting
time.
there
Yeah,
rehearsing.
yeah, and that's kind of the reverse side of things, right? But
Yeah,
for our subject, I know very very few people, and I'm trying to think of one, but I can't right now, who have not responded to, "Can you help me?"
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something in our human nature that just draws us to wanting to help somebody. We might not know how, and maybe that's why it's important
And
for you
so, yeah,
to write the
yeah.
instructions, right? Like, how can I help you? I need you just to listen, period.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Can you help me is too generic. Can you help me by just listening? Right?
Absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
now you're removing that the very thing that makes that person uncomfortable is the fact that they don't know how to help you. Right?
Well, and some
That
people
is
don't
why
know how to
they're
listen.
pulling out their positive, their
Yeah.
positive statements because they
Yeah.
don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
So be specific about what manner you need
Yeah.
that support, right? I just need you to listen, or I just need you to say that this is hard and it
Yeah.
sucks, right? This is tragic. I have said actually that to people. I just need you to admit that this was a huge tragedy. That's all I need to hear, right? And it's okay to say that, to kind of tell people how to help you. It's actually a lot more useful.
hmm And there's something like, overuse strength becomes a weakness. That's Carl Jung talks about
Absolutely.
that all the time. And I have been accused a lot of times of always wearing rose-colored glasses, like always looking at the bright
You
side.
said that last time too. It must be true.
Well, but yeah. I mean, I could see that happen, often, right?
Hmm.
And we talked about conditioned personalities, about avoidance of conflict, and why can't people just get along? Those kind of things. Like, any overused strength becomes a weakness, and when it shows up as a weakness, it shows up, like Carl Jung would say, in a very immature way, and that immaturity shows up as it turns toxic for the other person.
Hmm.
It's now because that person's unable to open up and process. It's like, now it's just feeding it the wrong direction. And of course, if you have anything that is held down or suppressed and has no chance of releasing, it's just like steam in a teapot, right? Or a kettle. Like, it's got to have some kind of release. The last thing you want is it to have an explosive release.
Yeah, I mean, it can come out in like as an explosive release, as
Yeah.
you just like blowing up on someone. It can come out as illness too,
Oh,
as disease. Like
yeah,
so
because it's
many different
yep,
ways that it's gonna
yeah,
find its way out. So, cannot stress enough the importance of expressing your feelings, acknowledging them, and really making friends with your feelings
yeah.
instead of judging them, or feeling guilt or feeling bad about having them. We all have feelings.
And I was gonna bring up this quote again, like what Sid Banks was saying. If the only thing people learned was not to be afraid of their experience, which is their feelings, that alone would change the world. And you know, and I heard that with the addicted teens on the street. I hear that from yourself and how others perceive us, when we're, how we interact with our kids. It's it's really understanding that the feelings are okay, no matter what they are. That's just what
Mhm.
they are, right? And unfortunately, our culture has, if you watch TV and all the commercials, they are really, certain feelings on this. If you're not happy, there's something wrong with you. I,
That's toxic positivity right there.
right there, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. So, what a wonderful conversation. It's like,
I mean, honestly, who says that we're just meant to be happy? Can we
well, exactly.
question
Who
that for a
came up with
second?
that idea, right?
Can we just do, would we like to be always happy? Sure. But is
Yeah.
there a rule that says that we must always be happy?
No. Yeah. Well, it's like,
Right?
I heard this and I'm not sure if I shared this before. As you notice, I tend to repeat certain things I really like, but I heard this metaphor about, the ups and downs of life, right? And, would you ask the ocean to always be calm? Like, in its nature, it can't be. Life is like that. Life is not all calm, right?
Hmm.
But we have something within us, and I'm going to call it the innate buoyancy, because like a cork that floats on water, right? We tend to rise and fall with as things keep going, as long as we stay buoyant. But the minute that we want to suppress something, in other words, push any kind of feelings down below the surface, it takes a lot of energy that could be used in elsewhere, right? So we're holding down and suppressing, but the minute that we do release it, we just naturally start to rise to the surface. We don't necessarily understand, the nature around buoyancy, but we do know that when we let go and relax and let life flow, we tend to be in a more calmer, peaceful state, right? Doesn't mean that everything's going to be calm, but we can process our feelings in a much healthier way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So welcome some of the latecomers to the show. Appreciate you coming on. Please watch the recording. This is really was a it's a tough subject. I think maybe we should probably, entertain the idea of coming back to it. Um,
What's tough about it?
Still trying to process and understand it. Oh, I hate it when you give me these easy questions. Like, oh, what's so tough about it? Okay, that's a bad choice of words. What's so
No, I
bad?
mean, I think it's tough for to be on the receiving end of it. It's just as tough to be on the one who is doing the toxically positive, behavior. It's just, I think it's just tough for the person that needs the support because they're not
Yeah.
getting their needs met
No,
in that
no,
moment.
I
They're not
agree.
getting
I agree.
right.
I agree.
And so, what can you do? We said you can express that.
Yeah.
Hey, this is not helping. You cheering me up no matter what is absolutely making me feel worse.
Yeah.
And I would love it if you could just support me by listening.
Listening. Yeah. Very
Yeah,
crucial. Very crucial. Listening for understanding and not judgment.
exactly. And next time, just pick somebody else
If it doesn't
to
work,
go vent to, right? Just,
phone a friend.
and that's the thing, to remove all expectations that that person is going to understand where you're coming from because
Yes.
they may not take your feedback in the way you meant it
Yeah.
because we are meaning making machines and we put meaning onto anything and everything, right? Just be prepared that just because you express your feelings, that doesn't mean that this person all of a sudden is never going to be, you know,
Yeah.
engaging in like cheerleading when cheerleading is not appropriate, right? And, they may not take it well. And that has nothing to do with you. It's just you have a need that this person cannot meet. right?
Mhm.
You can either be upset about it and feel like your feelings are not valid because somebody else doesn't know how to see your feelings, or you can go and engage in a conversation with someone who's able to just listen and not
Mhm.
judge and hold that space for you.
Yeah, and then just allow it to flow, and it'll it'll process itself quite naturally, because that's our minds are much like our bodies are meant to have healing within them, right? Like you don't, when you cut yourself, you don't go checking it every 10 minutes or so, or picking at the scab, right? You allow it naturally to heal itself, right?
Heal. Yeah. I
And
like that analogy. Yeah.
our minds have the same built-in mechanism, right? So it's always trying to balance itself out, and it's just when we get in the way of it, it doesn't have that ability to do so. So
Hmm.
thank you very much. A couple of things. We've got a guest coming on in a couple of weeks.
Very excited about it.
Yes, yes. Rob Cook will be joining us on March the 23rd, so 2 weeks. What he's a coach. He's got a program called Unfit, and his vision. If you go to his website, his vision is to end human suffering, and that's a big vision. Um, but his what he wants to talk about is balanced health, and about bringing spirituality, mental, and physical health in balance together in a new way. And I think he's going to share a little bit of what his insights and things are on that. Um,
I'm really excited to have him on.
yeah, yeah. So it's always a good perspective. Got a couple other invites out, just waiting to see. So people have a little bit of you know uh, different perspectives, bring different perspectives into our room, into our conversation. Um, so yeah, so thank you. Anybody that's watching the recording, please leave comments. Please share this with others so we can get it outreached, and like our channel, like our YouTube channel, like our page.
Follow us. Come on.
Yes,
We're
yes.
so good.
I've got like 500 Facebook friends, and we've got 80 between the two. That's just me, and you've probably got a million or 1,000 or something. Um, you know,
What?
I don't know.
Of feelings? Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Anyways, yeah. Please like us. Please share us. And we'll touch bases next week. Not sure what we're going to talk about, as always.
We're going to figure it out now. You'll be in the know soon.
Something always seems to come up with us, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So,
All
anyways,
right.
hey,
Well,
have a wonderful week.
you
Everybody
too,
have a
Rick.
wonderful week. Good to catch up with you again, and a real pleasure. Thank you.
Bye, everyone, from a New Yorker here.
from New York, from
I'm embodying it. I'm embodying my identity here, my 22-year-old identity. I'm
okay.
finally admitting it.
All right.
Finally.
Well, I'll bring the hippie out in me, and hang loose.
Oh, I have some of that too, actually. We want to
Okay.
bring them all out. Let's do it.
Okay. All right.
All right. Have a good week.